Many of us are stocking up on bulk food items to be prepared for uncertain times ahead. What if you're in a situation where the power is out for an extended period of time and you don't actually have a means to prepare those bulk food items that you spent so much time and effort in storing?
In this video, we're going to talk about 3 things you need so that you are prepared in those situations. So that if the power goes out, so that if there's other natural disasters and things that might occur, that you are in a situation where you have those dry goods and you have everything that you need to prepare them so that you have food for your family. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around.
Quite simply, and in this video we're going to talk about 3 essential items you need to make sure you can prepare your bulk food items in an emergency situation. The first thing is water. We're going to talk about why we choose to have backup water systems and why storing water in jugs just isn't the best idea.
Second, we're going to talk about alternative methods of cooking when your power goes out.
And the third one are the essential skills that you need to prepare food without any power source.
And why you should obtain those skills right now. We're going to include timestamps in the description to make it easier for you to navigate through the video if you aren't interested in seeing all of these topics.
So first, let's talk about water.
So let's talk about a few different situations. Maybe you are on a municipal water system. And so to be prepared, in case of some disaster where the electricity goes out, and now you need water. If you live in an area where you're able to have a water catchment system,
set up a tank, start collecting. You can have hundreds of gallons stored, and that will last you weeks, if not months, if rationed properly.
Another thing would be those water jugs. If you're storing water jugs in your home, you know, those aren't going to last for very long. So if you are in a situation where water catchment is not a possibility because of the restrictions in your area, and all you can rely on is those water jugs,
you're probably better off moving.
Yeah, like it's really not a sustainable option because you can only survive for a relatively short period, no matter how much water you're storing. When you think about the cooking and the cleaning and water for your drinking and all the things that need to be done with the water, you would have to store a massive amount of water to make that work for an extended period of time. So a philosophy that we really have is that when something is necessary for life, we would much rather have a source of it our own than relying on the government or some outside source to provide that for us. And so for us, that's why we don't feel very comfortable being on a municipal water system.
Right. You're paying for that water, as opposed to having a private well where the only thing you're really paying for is the electricity to run the pump, to pump the water from your well. And that leads us to the next thing. There's even steps to be taken if you have your own private well. The first step is buffering if the electricity does go out, and that can mean a solar generator to run your pump, a backup generator that doesn't necessarily have to be solar, gas or propane, but that will run out eventually too. Or a hand pump. You know, you'll always have muscle power. Putting a backup hand pump on your well is also something to protect against power outages. The other thing is multiple sources of water.
Yeah, so like more ideally.
Yeah, more ideally. So you have your well, you have your pump, you have your generator if the power goes out. And then another cushion would be to have a creek, a spring, a pond, or something that's backup that you can always go to and get water that way.
Even if that means you're just getting water like in a bucket, it's much better to have some type of a backup where you have a means to get water however primitively it means you need to get it.
Yeah, water's water. Mm-hmm. You just make sure you have a method, multiple methods preferably, to filter that water.
Yeah, and we just really like to have multiple methods to do any given necessary activity, just in case one happens to not be working.
That's right.
In case there's any type of error that occurs, then having a backup for your backup is always just a good idea.
Gives you great peace of mind.
Friends, we hope that you're getting value from this video. If you are, please hit the like button.
So you have your water, you have your dry goods, you're prepared. Then disaster strikes. You need a way to cook your food. So we want to talk about first the appliance or the means of cooking it. So if you have an electric stove currently and the power goes out, you need a backup. And we would recommend a camp stove, a little propane tank, 2-burner cooker. That's something that you can utilize. Granted, your fuel is going to be taken up pretty fast, but store some fuel. It's better than nothing. The other thing, you want to talk about it?
If you're in a situation where you have like a gas stove, but you don't have like a propane tank or gas tank outside of your house, it's really just coming from the lines that the city's providing, then also in a number of emergency situations, that is going to be cut off. So you want to make sure that you have a backup for that as well, because you're kind of in the same boat as people who have an electric stove. So really, ideally, you would have your own propane tank in your yard. You would have a propane stove or maybe gas. But even when you have a gas stove, a propane stove, or you have your own tank, you also want to make sure that you have backups for your backups. We really are big advocates for backing up everything as far as possible to the most primitive means so that we're prepared for whatever may come.
Yeah, and for a lot of these things, we've had to use them. We're speaking from experience because we've had power outages for over a week. We've had to use our wood stove. We've had to go out with a bucket and melt snow and things like that. So we can't emphasize this enough, having to actually survive for ourselves using these principles.
So something that I really love, in addition to having a propane stove, is having a thermal cooker. Now, a thermal cooker works great, especially if you're in a situation where you're trying to conserve your fuel, because what you do is you take your thermal cooker, it's like a pot inside of essentially a thermos.
Insulated container.
And so you take your pot and you put it on the stove. You start cooking whatever it is that you're going to be cooking, and you bring it to a boil, a rolling boil. And depending on what you're cooking, you're going to bring it for a few minutes, maybe even up to 10 minutes that you have it at a rolling boil. You put the lid on. You put the pot inside of your insulated pot. You close the lid, and that will continue cooking for 8 hours. And so it's going to use a lot less fuel, because if you're cooking dry beans, for example, there's no way that you're going to cook dry beans on your propane stove in just a 10-minute rolling boil. But when you couple that with the thermal cooker, you're saving fuel and you're able to cook that very easily.
I've actually heard it argued that beans and dry goods aren't really the best real food for prepping for that reason. It's so uneconomical as far as heating to cook those things. But the thermal cooker is a great alternative for the reasons Dana just described. Letting them slow cook in their own heat, and you're not having to produce that fuel, is perfect.
In addition to having a thermal cooker, something that we really enjoy is our sun oven. The sun oven is a really economical way to cook because you are relying on nothing but the sun to cook your food. You don't have any type of fuels that you're relying on, and so as long as you have sun in the sky and it's not like a really cloudy day, then you're able to utilize the sun oven to cook breads, to cook pies. And so the sun oven really is a great source to have, not just an emergency type situation, but we also really enjoy using the sun oven in the summer because you don't need to heat up your house while you're cooking. And it is a really great...
Yeah, it's a money saver, just because we're not having to cool down the hot kitchen from cooking. So another appliance that we want to talk about is specific to grains. Now, we recommend buying wheat in its whole form, the berry, mainly because it stores so much longer. If you get flour, it's going to go rancid a lot quicker. The wheat germ actually does not,
the wheat berries.
or the wheat berry, I said germ. Yeah, the wheat berries do not spoil as fast. In fact, when King Tut's tomb was discovered, there were wheat berries that were found in his tomb.
They had lasted like thousands of years.
Yeah, they believed that they were taking those things into the afterlife. Anyway, we say all that to say, if you have the wheat berry, you're going to need a way to turn that into flour. Unless you were doing wheatgrass, you can sprout the wheat and eat the wheatgrass that way and get a lot of nutrition, not even using any electricity. But if you want to be able to break bread and get carbohydrates that way, you need to turn the berry into flour. And there are options. We've actually owned a hand-powered grain mill that worked really well, and obviously that works great if you don't have any power. You could hook it to a bike. I've seen that done. There's tutorials on it to use your leg power because your arms do get tired. And then there are electric ones that you could purchase for when you have the convenience of electricity. But a means to grind your grains is going to be important if you are storing, like we are, the berry in buckets. I think we could both say that our favorite way of cooking is on a wood stove as far as preparedness and backup. And we've had to do it. And heating with wood is an amazing thing, but cooking with it is great. They have wood cook stoves where you can actually have an oven compartment where you can bake. We've always just used the wood stove, the top of it, to cook in cast iron pots on top of that. And then still continuing on in the wood source of heat, you don't even technically need a stove outside. You can build a campfire and cook over that. But having wood on your property to be able to build a fire is one thing. Waiting for a disaster to happen and then trying to find that wood might become quite challenging, if not impossible.
Yeah, so with anything, it really comes down to preparing ahead and making sure that you have these sources, and having multiple backup systems is really a great idea. And then third and finally, the last thing that you're really going to need in order to really be prepared to be able to use your bulk food in all emergency situations is having a working knowledge of all of these things. Knowing how to cook with dried beans and dry grains.
Yeah, knowing how to operate those appliances, having cooked with a sun oven or having built a campfire before and cooked over it. There's certain tools that you need to cook on a campfire. You can't just use any pot or pan over a campfire. You want to make sure you have those things and know how to use them.
And these things are fun, like developing these skills, using these tools in a time when it's really just to be developing your preparedness skills and to be enjoying time as a family. It really is enjoyable.
Backyard campouts are a great way to have fun with the family and develop these very skills we're talking about. Just having a little cookout. Makeshift fire. Got a little table set up here with our dogs. Can't have a barbecue without watermelon. Chips. Good to go. Goats are happy. We're happy.
If we're in an emergency situation and suddenly we need to learn all of these skills when it's already a really high stress situation, it's not going to be fun. If we've already learned the skills, we can really make the most of the time. And we can make the most of the time even if it is challenging, but it's just going to be a lot more difficult to do that.
Hopefully you can sense the passion in our voices as we talk about these things. If you're interested in topics like this, please subscribe to the channel where there will be more. Until next time, take care.